For a minute, I want to talk to you about photographs. Probably the best thing that ever happened to amateur historian. I came across one such photograph at the tail end of last year's summer, down in Castlebar in the Museum of Country Living. It was a photograph of a very slim, 50-ish gentleman standing beside a half-finished straw mat, and beside him his 9-year-old only child, a very serious little boy. An old-fashioned man in his own field, showing his own skill of an autumn day in 1963. 50 years and a bit more. I know all this because the little boy in the picture is myself. And the da, Pat Monks, was a dab hand at making anything from the produce of the land. From rush St. Bridget's crosses through straw mats, bee skeps, sugan chairs, willow baskets, to the grandest little bits of carpentry. His father before him was an accomplished dealer. He'd moved from the Galtee Mountains to the outskirts of Balbriggan in County Dublin, and he built a hell of a business with the farmers and butchers of the North County Dublin. He bred a bundle of sons, but it was the second youngest son who was the chosen one, the Dalai Lama of sheep and cattle dealers. Mick, we may as well get on first terms. Mick was wrestling with arithmetic in the Tech in Balbriggan. He must have been 14 years of age at the time when Mick Sr. landed into the classroom. "Here," says he, "enough of this. There's a fair in Anascall in the morning. I have to bring sheep over to Matt Rooney. So you may get the train now to Tralee and get a lift out to the fair. Buy every white-eyed heifer you see, but don't give any more than £7.10. Them other lads of mine wouldn't buy eggs in a hen house." And so started a career in the razor-edge business of sheep and cattle dealing. In the 1950s and 60s, practically every farmer in the area kept sheep and cattle, for rotation and to eat surplus vegetables. And our man Mick kept them supplied. The name of the game was to attend the fairs in Cork and Kerry and Tipperary or Limerick, ship the livestock home on the train, then put suitable bunches together for different farmers, and make the margin as big as possible. Sounds easy. It's anything but. Stock had to be paid for on the nail at the fairs, but Fingal farmers liked a bit of credit. Or maybe they wouldn't buy because of any number of factors. "I'd buy that cow, but there's hens in the shed." "No problem," Mick would say, "I'll buy the hens off you. You're better with a drop of milk than an egg." Next step, find a punter for the hens. The business grew, things changed, CIE got awkward, enter the van, the scut truck, the cattle lorry. Now Mick could arrive any time. "I hear you sold the black bullocks. I've 10 rare ones here in the lorry." The word no was a waste of wind. Let them stand into the yard, I won't charge you for looking at them. Once their hooves hit the ground, it was all over bar the technicalities. During the farming expansion of the late 60s, Mick had orders for all sorts. One of the neighbours ordered a Hereford bull from him. Now, Hereford bulls were scarce. They were as scarce as millionaires at the time. But Mick located a young bull in a little farmer's place up above Waterville in County Kerry. The only problem was, the calf had been reared in the house, and one day, a contrary old collie bitch bit the 2 ears off him. Mick bought the bull, and sold him to Tommy, the neighbour, in the dark, 2 nights later. When Tommy caught up with him, the answer was, "Are you going to talk to him or let him bull cows?" I can well remember that big roan bull for years and years doing his job for Tommy, not an ear in sight. Trade-ins now were a problem for Mick, awkward enough to work out the prices. I remember a man calling in our gate to him once upon a time. He said, "Hey Mick, what's Horn Joe's worth?" He said, "Nothing, it'll be worth less next week." Once early enough in his career, Mick found himself in the town of Rush in County Dublin on a sunny summer's evening. He'd come to a football match and his lift had disappeared. He got talking to a decent man in the area, Garvey Butterley from up the road. Turned out Garvey had a short-horn cow for sale, and Mick wasn't prepared to miss her. So he made his deal, paid up. Gee, she was terrible cheap. And he thought, how will I get her out of this town? If I leave her, Garvey will sell her again in the morning, but no transport. So he put his hand on the red cow's hip and walked her out the Whitestone Road past the graveyard and on to Bow Hill. She was a quiet old doll. There was no traffic. So she rambled on, taking an odd mouthful of grass. Up the hill past the big house gate, Peel's once upon a time and related to a Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Across the railway bridge and into Lusk Parish, the Remount farm on their left. On the way into the village, Mick had to put up with plenty of slagging from the boys playing handball, but he could give as good as he got, and better. Up the street, he met his first potential customer, Bill Sweetman. "Mick, I'm buying nothing till after the summer." "Right, Bill, you're not the only pebble on the beach." Mick and his cow kept walking through the green, past the church, and west out that old Quickpenny Road. I wonder where that name came from. I've searched and inquired, but no result. Now there was a problem for Mick, because it was getting late for calling to clients. It was nearly midnight, and at 7 that morning, he'd been selling heifers in Screen and County Meath, so a rest and a sleep were indicated. Lord Howth had donated a hunting lodge of his to house the first school here in Hedgestown, to educate the children of his tenants in the area. It had many a threat of closure, but it's going strong to this very day. Daylight comes early in June, so Mick and the cow were on their way before 4 o'clock, under the wires at the 5 roads and heading into the west, through the Nevet and the cross of Nacalia. Nobody up yet, so they kept walking. Hollywood, a busy place for hundreds of years, has been slowly decaying since the dissolution of the monasteries. Now it's just another grey ruin, a quiet little graveyard tucked into the hill. The next crossroads, the Nag's Head, had a tavern for thirsty travellers up to about 1860. No chance of refreshments here for a cattle dealer and his cow. George Sherwin in Damastown was an early riser, could be a buyer. "Mick, I wouldn't take her for a present, keep going." There's a grand little church at Damastown here, part of the Knoll and Ballybuckle parish. Parish priest Father Hatton fed a few cattle. But no, any cow bar a red cow, come back when you have a black one. Under the trees at Malahau, the home of the Baker family, originally rectors of Hollywood, about the same year as Mick made his trip, a foal was born in that field on the right, to one of their mares, Bright Cherry. He was an accident-prone little bugger. He managed to geld himself on the barbed wire, but they dressed him up and brought him off to Gough Sales. They called him Arkle. On the bend here is a yard called Fanning's Walls. I don't know who Fanning was or why he built the walls. This stage, Mick had about 12 miles on the clock and no sale, but he turned right for Garristown at Spring Hill and stepped out. Across the field on the left is the Grolla, another ruined church, graveyard, a holy well. Somebody deepened a ditch in the 1970s and the holy well ran dry. Such is life. Baldwinstown is quiet enough now, but 250 years ago it was a flyer. It had mills for corn and cloth, timber merchant, shops, taverns, all gone. The two travellers made a right turn there and pulled up at Jim Keogh's 2-storied house. Jim didn't surface too early, so Mick lit a handful of gravel at the top window. "Have a smashing cow for you, Jim." "How much, Mick?" £12.10. "Turn her into the shed and I'll give you a brief in a minute." The word check was never said in polite circles. It was always a brief. Mick collared his brief, got a lift to Balbriggan with the bread man. He had to be at a fair in Kilmallock the next morning. My big regret is that we didn't just capture him on the camera before he passed away. He kept up the trade until he was at the end of his years, and then his health packed in and Alzheimer's took him for its own at the very end. The last time I met him, I don't know if he even knew me, but still he said, "Good man, how are you? Any chance of a brief?" He was the last of the cowboys.
As a former member of the Willie Monks Folk Museum in Lusk, I would like to give you a bit of its history. In 1981, local historian Willie Monks passed away. In the year following, a committee was formed in order to establish a folk museum in his name. The old church building beside the round tower was available, but in a poor condition. With the help of Dublin County Council, the generosity of the local people, and much hard work from the committee, the museum was opened. There were a wide range of artifacts, tools, old photographs, documents and farming implements, and items which reflected the rural nature of the area and its history. Over the next few years, people staged exhibitions of their various private collections, which gave variety to the visitors. The museum was extremely popular with school groups and with returned emigrants and tourists. In 1986, Brendan Skully joined the museum as director and did out a work plan for the museum. Grants were received from Dublin County Council, windows were replaced, walls replastered, painting and cleaning and tiles on the roof being repaired frequently was an endless job at great expense. Book sales and churchgate collections, along with a small entry fee into the museum, brought in funds. 3 period rooms were put together, a kitchen, bedroom and parlour, and were made up by local tradesmen, and the thatching was done by local farmers. In June 1988, a reception was held in the museum to mark the Dublin Millennium celebrations and the official opening of the museum. The large attendance included members of the Monks family, local community and various Fingal representatives and TDs. The Museum Committee also celebrated the 800th anniversary year in 1991 of Grace Dew Convent in the grounds of Grace Dew, where Mr. Bob Brown, historian, spoke of the history of the convent. The opening of the museum celebrations and Grace Dew events is recorded on video for posterity. Sadly, the Willie Monks Museum closed in 1996. The church fell into a poor state of repair and was taken over by Fingal County Council in 2004, who subsequently restored it.
I'm here today at Lusk Old Church, and I'm here to meet a lady called Lorraine Power. Lorraine has come from Clonshock not many years ago, and she has set herself up and is now living with her husband and her child in Lusk. And in the short period of time, she has set up the Power Drama School. It's quite incredible. Over the last 2 years, she has a list of productions, 7-8 productions. At the moment, she's going to do The Wizard of Oz next Christmas. And so I just want to find out what it was like for Lorraine to come to a new community, to set up this new business, and just what her hopes are for the future.
So we started off in August 2012. Well, actually, there was a lot of planning and preparation went into, we had to find a venue, get insurance, draw up our child protection policies, have the right staff, everything like that, marketing, the whole work. So register as a company. And although I had worked as a drama teacher for many, many years, it was my first experience of setting up my own business. So it was a big, daunting task at the time, and I remember myself and my mother, who's been a great help to me, we walked around Lusk and we must have posted in about 3,000 leaflets into people's doors, and we got the grand total of 7 people for our first summer camp, So I kind of realised then, gosh, this is going to be a lot of hard work, an uphill battle. And at the time there was the Race Against Waste campaign going on, and we gave a free summer camp place to that campaign as well. So we had 8 children for our first summer camp in August 2012. And it was fantastic. I kind of knew this was our first experience in St. McCullen Centre, and I kind of knew we had something very, very special. We had 8 wonderful, wonderful children, and we put on a production of Snow White and the 5 Dwarfs, because we didn't have 7. So when the parents came down and saw the performance, and we had tea and coffee laid on afterwards, they were very, very impressed. And then went back to their schools and spread the word, and it was word of mouth, because in the next term, which was September to Christmas, we had 29 children, which was huge growth from 7 children, know. And we put on a production of Cinderella in the Carnegie Library, and that was very successful. It was quite squashed the stage and the facilities, but we did it, and I suppose it was quite ambitious of us to do as well, with children who had never really acted before or hadn't too much experience, but they did a great job. And from there then, the following term, we had 35 children, and we went into the St. Patrick's Day parade, and they were very well turned out, very bright and very colourful, and added a real splash of colour to the parade and something new, I suppose. And then we did 3 end of term shows for the parents and families of the children. The younger group did The Ugly Duckling, the middle group did an adaptation of Oliver Twist, and the older group did a newly devised play called Rise Up, which tackled the problem of bullying.
Okay, can I just ask you then about your group, the age group for a start?
Yeah, so we take children from age 6, and the reason we take them from age 6 is just that we do use scripts and even lyrics for songs, and it helps if they can read a little bit, and also for performances at night. You don't want them too tired, and age 6 they've already, many of them, been in school for a year, so they have that little bit of discipline and experience from the school. So we take them from age 6, and we go from age 6 to 17, but our oldest at the moment is 15.
It's 15.
Yeah.
Mainly girls, I presume.
Mainly girls. We've 5 wonderful boys, and they're brilliant, and we would love to get more boys involved, because you know there's many great roles for boys, and they're just as talented as the girls, and we'd like to see more boys coming on board. Yeah.
So what is the potential in Lusk? I mean, how do Lusk compare to other groups and other places you've seen, or is there any difference? Is drama just drama?
There's great potential here, you know, and we hope we've just completed a video, a short clip of our students performing, and we hope to send it into the Late Late. We'd like to get them onto the Late Late. That will be the next step. But I think they're very, very talented, and as well as the talent, I think what's lovely is the friendships that are being made in the group. You know,
and the parents' reaction to all of this? Parents
have been fantastic, incredibly supportive. Like, we've had to rope parents in for various, you know, backstage and chaperoning and volunteering. One of our parents made a beautiful turkey for the Christmas carol, you know, so they've been amazing. I think, you know, the support in Lusk is brilliant, and I'm very grateful to everybody who's supported us thus far, and hopefully it will continue.
This year is the 160th anniversary of the sinking of the ill-fated ship, the Taylor, which sank off Lambay Island near Rush, North County Dublin, on the 21st of January 1854. It gives me great pleasure to introduce an adventurous lost man, Laddie de Jong, to talk of his part in the diving to the wreck and what he discovered.
Well, the very first dive I ever went on, I was only a learner diver, and it was my first wreck dive that I went on. And I strayed away from the other lads because they were all going after the Delph. The Delph was very visible, and everybody went after the Delph, and I went away off down the back of the ship, it was actually. And I came across the binnacle, and I had a go at it with my knife to know what kind of metal it was, and I found out it was copper. And I thought at the time it was some kind of a ventilating hole. And for years after, when I was with Miles, Doctor, Lord of mercy on him, he was my diving buddy, and he says the binnacle never was taken off the tailor. He says, and it must be still on it. And he says, do you know what a binnacle is? I didn't even know what a binnacle was at the time. Well, he says, the next time we dive, he says, I'll bring you in a book and I'll show you what a binnacle is. So the one he brought in was actually a square-headed one. And the minute I saw it on the book, I twigged. I had seen that down the back of the boat. And I said to myself, now that's what I'm going to have to chase after. About 10 minutes into the dive, when I went out, I found it. And the mark is still on it where I marked it with the knife. And I was working at a porthole when I found it. And I'm pulling down clean water. And I just had the porthole off. And I looked up, and here was this sitting beside me. And I went over and had a look and pulled up, and I could see the compass swinging on the gimbals, the same as the day it went down. Next thing, air was gone. What am I going to do? I grabbed the porthole, blew me fenzy. That's the life jacket for to bring you up, and there's a second bottle on it, and it blows it up and it floats you to the surface. And I shouted to Miles, Miles, I have the binnacle. He said, shh, there wasn't one within miles of us. It was a weekday and there was no one out there. So of course, none of us had air, could do nothing about it. So the very next day, we got air. I got the fellow that worked with me go to Darky to get bottles blown, and out we went. And I had it marked on 2 headlands. And the first time I went down, I put a shot line on the anchor rope to go around in a circle to find this, do you see. First round, I came across it. It was attached with those feet that you see there to the deck. And it was starting to blow a gale upstairs, so I says to myself, we had to get out of here quick. So I had to ring it off. I thought maybe that where it was bolted onto the deck would come, but no, the foot stayed behind. But we didn't mind that because we had the main thing, which was the binnacle. And up I went, got a rope, attached it to it, and started to haul it up. And southeasterly kept blowing harder and harder, and there's a kind of a bore there where that is, you see. And we started hauling it up. And when we got it to the gunnels, we couldn't load it because it's an awkward thing, and the two of us couldn't get pulling together. It was kind of crowded where we were. So I had to get out and get my shoulder under it. It was getting lighter at the time because there was sand in it, and with the action of the waves, the sand was washing out of it, so it was getting lighter. As you can see, it's a fairly light thing, you know. But I got under it in any case and got into the boat. Next thing, the waves started to come over the gunnels. Miles couldn't start the engine, and he had a second engine, so he says, I'll put that on, and I was loading all the gear up into the front of her to rise the stern of her so that she wouldn't be taking water. And he took off the engine and he tore on the second engine. Couldn't start it either. And the water was coming across the gunnels all the time, so we were nearly being the second rate. So eventually he thought of what he had done wrong on the first engine, so he took the second engine off, put the first engine back on again, and we got going and we got in. The first dive the following year, we got the foot that we had left behind, and then it was complete. So we were very happy. We had the best trophy that a diver ever could get because it's unique. It's been quoted in textbooks all over the world as the thing that made the tail lure go down because she hadn't done a compass swing, so the compass had never been corrected. These pockets contained metal chains, and the chains to get the compass working properly would have had to been adjusted, but seeing as she never did a compass swing, she never had been adjusted, and they say that that was the main reason that she hit Lamb Bay. The second reason was it took 5 miles to turn her, so they couldn't, and they had the sailors they had were all foreigners and they couldn't work the sails at the time, and the rudder was also too small because story goes that she was originally designed as a motor boat for an engine, and that meant that you had the wash of the engine going across the rudder, and that made her steerable. But now when you put sail on her, you needed 3 times the size of a rudder. You needed the stern bringing the water to the rudder so that she steer, and that all was wrong design. It's covered up in a lot of the stories about the tail lure, but it's I'd say it's one of the main reasons why we have the tail lure here. And she was only 100 miles from where she was built. Even where she was built was a very crooked, shallow kind of river, and they had to wait on a spring tide, and they had to wait on 2 tides before they got her into the Mersey. And then she was properly ballasted and rigged out there. But they were in a hurry because she was the White Star Line, but they were beginning to go broke at the time, and they needed her in a hurry. So then they thought the quickest way was put sail on her. What are they, a 5-foot tombstone? And of course, going to what would you say, a new country, they needed tombstones, do you see. It was ballast plus cargo, because if they hadn't got that, they'd have had to put in just ordinary rocks into it or anything to make it heavy, because those masts were very heavy, and with a lot of sail on them, they had to have something to keep the boat upright. there was all sorts of slate lentils then as well, farm machinery, anything to do with emigrants, do you see, to supply them when they went there. Now there's another story attached to that. When we took it up, upright, and it was floated on 6 5-gallon drums. And you brought your drum down full of water, you brought a bottle down with it, and you bled your bottle into the 6 drums, and the 6 drums just rose the thing to the surface. And when we got it to the surface, there's big currents, I don't know, you know the nose, there are big currents, there's a corner in Lamb Bay, and there's a couple of different currents there. It was turning the tombstone so that we couldn't pull it with the boat. So we had to throw it up on rocks, and we waited for the tide to go down, and we attached the 6 drums to float it horizontally. And of course she was easy towed then. Once you had her horizontally, she skimmed then, do you see. She actually floated up with the speed of the boat, you see. And don't know what to tell you the story about going in. We brought it into Lamb Bay because we were running out of fuel into the harbour. And we asked Lord Revelstoke, could we leave it there overnight, and we collected it in the morning. So he wouldn't let us leave it there. For what reason, I don't know. But we had to tow it to Rogerstown, just at the mouth of Rogerstown. Miles was after going ahead to get fuel, and I towed it to the mouth of Rogerstown. Just as we got to the mouth of Rogerstown, tide changed. And of course she floated up on the tide, and he met me halfway in the river. And it was doing as a notice board for the sailing club for a long time in Rogerstown. And then when they were doing the job on the boat yard there, she was shifted, and Percy Dunn took it into care. And then Breda Dockrell said to me one day, she said, that tombstone, she said, that should be in the museum in Dollabay. So I said, right, we'll go to Percy and we'll get it. And that's how it's come here then. We brought it here then. And there's about 50 more of them, I suppose, or more on that boat still. And a lot of them are actually almost cemented together with the calcareous growth that comes on them down there. Well, we also took about 13 portholes off her. Now the portholes, they were on the ribs, the boat collapsed outwards, and there was sand then built up on the actual side of the boat, covering over the portholes, and we didn't find them, of course, being down in the sand. But there were some divers came over from Wales, and they knew all about diving on wrecks because they had tons of wrecks out there with the war and that kind of thing. And they came over especially to get portholes, but then they had to leave it. So they taught us how to find these portholes. There were ribs, you see, holding the plates together, the plates to the side of the boat. And every 6th in one spot, and every 7th you had a porthole out at a certain distance from the boat. So that's how we got so many portholes. And we've donated a lot of them. There's one down in the museum ship down in Wexford. There's another is a prize for the mermaids in Rush. And I don't know, I've lost, I won. It's there actually. Do you want to see that? That's the porthole, and a massive porthole it is, because I've portholes of other ships as well, and there's none of them as strong as that. All handmade, different metals on the plate that holds it onto the ship as the plate that was there. And the rubber actually inside in that is that rubber. It's still rubber. You can still feel after 160 years it's still rubber. Look at how strong that is. Some of them you could nearly bend them with your hands on some of the boats. But a massive ship. She was the flagship of the White Star Line, and she was the Titanic of her day, and she did the same thing as the Titanic done, only she did it nearer home. Yeah. There was another thing that was taken off, quite a good story attached to it too, the boss of the wheel. Now there had been an attempt made to take the boss off her by attaching the rope to it on low tide and waiting on the tide to pull it off, you see, but it tore the wheel asunder actually. But it was the only thing we got with the tailor on it. And some of the boys, they had taken 2 portholes, and there were 3 of them. And one lad didn't get a porthole, do you see. Now I think I tell the story wrong. There was 3 portholes taken. One lad took 2 portholes, another lad took 1, and one lad got none. So they found the boss, but they were out of air at the time they found the boss. And he rang us where the boss was. It was on the H girder. Now everybody knew the H girder on the tail lure. It was the steering gear. Now we never recognised it as a steering gear till we found the boss on it. And then we knew it was the steering gear. But he rang us that it was Sean Sheridan at the time. He was going to go out for the next day early, do you see, to take it off. And we got there before him. Now we were nearly out of air too, so we had sent a lad for air. Miles dropped me on it with a float upstairs, highly illegal. And I had a hacksaw and a new hacksaw blade, and it was very soft metal to saw through actually. And I got it off in jig time, and I brought it up to the float I had upstairs, and threw it up on the rocks over here and sat over there in case Sean Sheridan would come and bully me off it or something like that. And Miles come back and we put it into the boat. Next thing we see Sean Sheridan coming over the horizon, and Miles, great, I don't know whether he ever knew Miles or not, but he had a great sense of humour, you know. And he throws it down the bottom of the boat and he throws a plastic bag on it, and of course Sean come up and pull alongside. Grand day for diving, yeah, lovely day. There's not much left down there, Miles says. He says, I think I'll go down in any case. Sean says, like, you know, I think I'll go down in any case. And then there'll be another whole conversation of like all the stuff that was taken off, and there wasn't much left and that kind of thing. And Sean was mad to go, like he knew this boss, he thought this boss was down there, you see. And Miles says to him, he says, you needn't go down. He says, we have it. And Sean didn't want to recognise what we had. He was hope against hope that we hadn't the boss that he was going for, you know. So after another half an hour's conversation, Virginia, eventually Sean, he says to Sean again, he says, we got it. What did you get? Oh, he says it's there. And this went on. It'd break our heart laughing the way the pantomime was going on, you know. And eventually he made Sean come in and take the plastic bag. You want to see a face dropping? Well, we were glad we got it because they sold everything that they got off her, like, you know, and we preserved everything, sort of thing, so at least it was preserved, you know. The pottery, yeah. Yeah, we set up a dredging system, and that meant bleeding a pipe, in a small pipe of air into a bigger pipe, and putting them out of the bigger pipe down on the sand, and that sucked up the sand. The bubbles going up the pipe created a vacuum, you see, and the sand disappeared, and then you could get at the pottery, do you see. It was in a load of crates and packed with straw. And we took over 1,000 pieces, but it was all seconds where it was made, because it all deteriorated with the time down there, and the glaze actually flaked off it. And there are some pieces not bad, but you can even see the marks on that there. And we got up a medical chest, and that was all sorts of flimsy bottles and things like that with all sorts of potions in them. And stinking stuff it was. When you brought it up, with the pressure that was in it, you see, some of it exploded, you know. And I still have some of those bottles at home, interesting enough in their own. We brought up a canteen, a silver-handled cutlery, and that was at the side of the boat. Miles was hammering away at one of those stone jars, and he was going sort of carefully to try and not break it. But then I was next down, and he was running out of air, do you see, and he said, be very careful of that. And when I went down, I saw all these silver fingers sticking up. And I sort of said to myself, has to be silver. There was no chrome in those days. In any case, chrome would have deteriorated like down there. So there it was, a whole canteen packed in leather, rolled in leather, whole canteen of silver-handled cutlery. I still have it at home, some of it. Now, Miles had half of it, and I had half of it. And the idea again was to bring it to Newbridge and get the blades were all rusted, of course. The blades were rusted out. It was only the handles that were left. We got the safe, and when we got into the safe, we thought we were right with money. But that had been when she went down originally. That had been opened by the hard hat divers, and they had taken any money that was in it out of it. Now there was counterfeit money in it, counterfeit gold in it actually, and the original people had brought that on another ship to Australia, and they had actually been found with it out there, and they had been arrested. So that was all, and we got a shotgun, the remains of a shotgun in it. The boss was still there, but of course there was very little of the barrels left, you know. There was some of the barrels left as well. The way they had to plumb it was, they plumbed it, they had a delf bowl, and it was cased in lead. And the idea of casing it in lead was they couldn't plumb the delf bowl to the system, you see, to the sewerage system they had, but the lead they could, you see, because with the movement of the boat there was movement in the lead, you see, so it didn't puncture, you know. But that was from the Royal Suite. Now we also found the remains of a washhand basin with the same design on it, delf washhand basin, and that was the Royal Suite on her. She must have been some ship. There was a unique flushing system on it too. Now, that pipe going up into the top of it, of course, that was the water coming in, you see. And then, of course, the excrement going out, I suppose, was underneath, you see. Yeah.
Thank you to Paddy Bates, Donabate Historical Society, for his cooperation and input to our recent visit to Newbridge House.
The sinking of the Tellure was the biggest tragedy ever in the Irish Sea, I think, up to that time.
Yeah.
And of course, the Historical Society, when we established this museum, we were delighted that Laddie had agreed, in conjunction with the Dockrells, to move the binnacle into the museum. It's the pivotal attraction now, it's the main attraction in this little museum. And we have the toilet seat, as Laddie has described, and items of crockery from the ship as well. And without Laddie, of course, we wouldn't have those items. And it's a wonderful acquisition for the museum, and we treasure it. And when people come in here, it's the first thing they want to see is the binnacle.
Well, we had great pleasure in diving on the Taylor, and now Padder has given us the icing on the cake, with preserving it here for us.
Yeah. Well, I think the original intention, or the latest intention, is that this will move inside the house and into a room in Newbridge House.
Lovely.
Which will be much more convenient for everybody. Yeah.
We're very happy to have Eileen Sweetman share her memories of life in Lusk. She was a member of the Kelly family who lived at the square in older times. The family were noted for sporting endeavours and lively conversation regarding politics, culture, and the happenings in the village.
Growing up in Lusk in the early 40s, I was born at the square in Lusk in 1937 at Kelly's Corner, where my father, Pat Kelly from Carduff, had a bicycle and electrical shop. And my mother, Rose Brogan from the Commons, had a tobacconist and sweet shop, which were a big part of the community. I still meet people in Lusk today who tell me that my father was the person who brought electricity to their homes, and it always makes me smile. Lusk has changed so much over the past 70 years, but I suppose that's progress. And while progress brings many positive changes, it is important to remember how things used to be in our lovely village. Lusk was a great place to grow up, and I am blessed with many fond memories. Outside our house was always a hive of activity. When a big football match or hurling match from Croke Park was broadcast on the radio, my father would put a large speaker out the window of the workshop, and lots of people from the area would congregate on the grass verge outside our house, which is now Murray's car park, to enjoy the game and partake in the banter. After the game, many stayed on to indulge in pitch and toss, a gambling game on the toss of a coin, or came into our house for a game of cards. Our door was always open, and characters who passed through our home always had a story to share. Beyond our own house, Lusk had a number of places that were very important to us locals. We didn't need to venture very far because everything we needed was right there. One must remember this was before supermarkets arrived. There were 17 small shops and businesses in Lusk, and they all seemed to survive well. Some shopkeepers delivered to Corduff, Colcott and Ballybockle on horse-drawn vehicles, and many a fine Saturday I remember setting off out the country with Johnny Corrie from Mackey's Butchers on Post Office Road on these deliveries. Today we think of the Carnegie Library on the Green as a place for classes and community gatherings, but then it was used extensively. It was the hub of the social scene in the village, and the Green was alive with dances, ceilidhs and concerts. And even though the facilities were very basic, we made the best of it, and as a result had some wonderful times there and lovely memories to look back on. At the square there was a sale yard, complete with sale ring and tiered seating, and numerous cattle pens. For children it was a great place to gather and while away the hours. When the sheep and cattle sales were on, we spent many happy days there in wonderment, fascinated by the auctioneer's electric tongue and speedy sales pitch. When the sales were not on, we used the sale yard as a glorious playground, and we produced and directed our own concerts and shows. Lusk provided healthy pickings for children, and we also played in the grounds of the old church and scaled the wall to steal apples and pears from Dan Sherry's orchard, where many a fine chase ensued. But we were all good runners in those days. In the winter time we had slides on the road from Jerry Clinton's house down to Murray's Corner, or from Chapel Road down to the village store on Main Street, our very own little winter Olympics. Sport was a big thing in Lusk. While there were no dressing rooms, clubhouses or fancy pitches like there are now, we did have a wonderful handball alley which was built by the men of Lusk in the early 30s, beside the old soccer club. Sadly it has gone now, but it delivered lots of fun and gave us great skills while it lasted. Most summer evenings we all gathered at the football field over at Rahaney Roundabout, where hurlers, footballers and camogie players all trained together. And many a time we got in the way of a very fast travelling sliotar or hurling ball. I also remember my mother and Tom Monks from Barrack Road composing songs when our hurlers or footballers had a victory over neighbouring teams. The old school on the Green had about 160 pupils, that's boys and girls. Can you believe there are nearly 1,000 pupils in the National School now? Back then there were only just 2 rooms upstairs for the girls and 2 downstairs for the boys. No water or heat and only 2 outside toilets. Imagine trying to explain this to children today, they would scarcely believe it. Inside we were nice and warm because for physical exercise, pupils used to go out and gather sticks in the churchyard or in Hans Lane for the open fire. It might all seem very basic looking back, but some things were more sophisticated. For instance, back then we didn't go to the bank came to us. We had our own mobile bank. Every Wednesday a bank official came all the way to Lusk by taxi from Balbriggan for a couple of hours. The bank rented a room in Kit Rogan's house beside the old post office, and all the banking was done there. Progress has meant that all this stopped many years ago, and now I suppose we're very lucky to have our ATMs and our credit union. Can you imagine asking a bank to come to you nowadays? Not all progress is good, you see. Lusk is now a bigger and better place than it was in the 1940s. But now, while we have more material things, we don't seem to have as much time. People are always very busy, so I think it's very important that we make an effort to know our neighbours and the history of the community we live in. I am very lucky to have lived in this village for so long and to have raised my own family on the loving doorstep where I was born. I still think Lusk is a great place to live, a little rural oasis on the edge of a great city. I am as proud to be a true blue Lusk person today as I was when I watched my father and mother place hurling and football trophies in the window of our little shop on the square many years ago. Fond memories indeed. Níl aon tintan mar the hintan féin. There's no place like home.
On Sunday the 11th of May, Stage 3 of the Giro d'Italia passed through the village of Lusk. The whole community came out to welcome the race with much colour and excitement.
My name is Paul Hampson. I'm the parish priest here in Lusk in North County Dublin. I've been here since 2010, so I have completed 4 years this year working among the community. It's a lovely town, and on my first arrival here, coming in to take up my position, when I saw the tower and the round tower, I thought that was Lusk Church, and I was really excited. And coming along then I realised that it had been the Church of Ireland and is now a heritage centre. So coming along then to actually see the Catholic Church here in Lusk, I got a greater surprise because it's a beautiful church, opened in 1924 and containing sort of beautiful architecture based on Cormac's Chapel on the Rock of Cashel, but more so the beautiful stained glass windows by Harry Clark. So that was a great surprise. But more surprises were to unfold as I took on my position and began to do the pastoral work in the area, the community. Very vibrant community. And as Father Fitzgibbon described it to me, Lusk is a real jewel, a secret jewel in the diocese, and he's very right. It's a lovely parish, a lovely community, and anytime we do anything, we're always very, very well supported. So it was just indicative of the type of spirit that exists here. And it was just a great day. I must say I enjoy the process of working with the community on projects, even more so than the project itself. Now I do enjoy the projects, but I really enjoy the process of people coming together and working. So there's a great sense of the community. Now I believe it goes back to people having lived here a long time, knowing their heritage and really appreciating the history that exists here. We go back to St. Patrick, St. McCullen. He was described to me before I came as a boozing buddy of St. Patrick. So the community, the Christian community, goes back that far to McCullen, and he's represented in the Harry Clark windows there in the church and in some of the little carvings on the wall. As I said, I'm happy to be here, happy to do this interview, and happy to encourage people to come live here, but above all to take an interest in the area and to support all the organisations like the Tidy Towns, like Heritage, and the parish indeed. But there's the Scouts, there's so many things going on here, and I would encourage people just to preserve the lovely atmosphere that exists here in the community of Lusk.
25 years. Is it a short time or is it a long time? That's a question that I'm going to have to ask you. I suppose it's a long time to have a hole in your roof or a stone in your shoe. But it's a short time when you think about this building behind me, or the Vikings, or the age of the universe. Anyhow, I might think of an answer myself as I go along. But anyhow, 25 years ago, that's 25 Christmases and 25 calendars thrown in the bin brings us back to 1989. And two major events happened in 1989 that had very far-reaching consequences. Number one, the bold Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web. Number two, Mrs. Pat Kelly invented the Lusk Heritage Group. Now, both of these things have had far-reaching consequences. The World Wide Web has touched practically everyone on the planet at this stage. And the Lusk Heritage Group have gone from success to success. We started off to make one short film about the area, about the community, about the history that was around us, and that would be it. 25 years later, we're still at it. Countless films, books, publications, the plaques that you see around the village, recording of the old people who sadly are not with us anymore. All these things have been done over that quarter of a century. The original Fabulous Four, if you like, that founded it was Mrs. Pat Kelly herself, Mr. Aidan Arnold, Paddy Weston, and yours truly. We were all far better looking then than we are now, and full of enthusiasm. Pat Kelly, I must say, deserves immense credit. She was a motivator, she had interest, she had the power to move people along. Aidan Arnold, a man of letters, a man of history. He knows farming inside and out, from the past, from the present, and recognises the fact that today's tools and bits and pieces are going to be tomorrow's history. Paddy Weston, and coming to the sad bit of the story now at this stage, Paddy Weston passed away very suddenly this year. He was the consummate man, there is no question about that. He was a historian, but much more than an historian. He sailed the world with the Merchant Navy, and after retiring, he was full of interest in his community, in the pipe band in the area. He went beekeeping, he made pottery. He's such a loss to the community, there's no question about that. He was, I suppose, our own fountain of knowledge. We're going to miss him, there's no question about that. But the rest of us are going to soldier on, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised if in another 25 years we mightn't even be quite as good looking then as we are now. But the rest of us will keep at it. It's been a pleasure, I'm so glad we did it, and we're going to keep it up.